Nisam Bulavinaka, and welcome to Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits. And we have as our guest in the studio, she's the Executive Director of Lifeline, Archana Mani. A warm welcome to the show.
Bula, thank you for inviting me on the show.
Yes, I know you are a famous face now, as you seem to be appearing everywhere, but for a very important reason, as I know that a psychological condition of post-traumatic stress disorder is present among our people. But before we move on with the more serious topic, maybe you'd like to tell me where you went to school when you were a child.
Oh, okay. I am born and bred in Suva. I went to Vioto Primary and Grammar in terms of high school. Finished off at Indian College, now known as JNRI, and studied at the University of the South Pacific in applied psychology and community psychology and counseling.
Okay.
And basically been working in the development sector for the last 16 years.
Wow. Well, you look really young when I look at you. Okay, then. But anyhow, Miss Mani, what does Lifeline do?
Lifeline Fiji's primary objective is really looking after the emotional well-being of Fijians and ensuring that they're resilient when it comes to difficult and pressing issues in their lives, and they're able to actually cope and have skills that actually allow them to emerge from difficult situations.
I see. So has Lifeline been in Fiji for a while now?
Lifeline Fiji has been in existence in Fiji for a while. I think going back about 12 years or so, it was under the Wesley Church as a program. It was in 2013 that it was decided that Lifeline Fiji needs to become an independent organization, and that's when it ventured out and registered under the Charitable Trust Act and became an independent non-government organization. And we have been in business since then.
This is really interesting because, I mean, sometimes we don't have enough of these type of outlets for, people who are affected psychologically.
That's correct.
Yes.
I think one of the things we work in this field so much, one of the things we realized is when someone gets a cut on their hand, we ask people when we're doing community awareness, what do you do? So they're like, oh, we go to mom or we go to someone in the house to help with that cut. And then we ask, what do you do if that cut does not heal and becomes infected? Then the response is that we go and see a professional, we see a doctor for help. Likewise, if you've got an emotional issue, if you're feeling sad about something, whether it's a breakup, whether you've lost someone or the other, then if you're feeling sad, you'll talk to people within your own circles. But if you find that you're not necessarily getting over that feeling of sadness, then that's when you seek professional help. And there's a lot of stigma in Fiji around that.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're trying to address.
Well, that is really good. And just on to the subject of because of what Cyclone Winston has done to our women, men and children. And I know that they're most likely suffering as we speak from stress and post-traumatic stress disorder brought on by Cyclone Winston's devastating impact on us. Did you manage to visit any of the worst affected areas?
As a team, we had mobilized 20 volunteers to go out in the Western Division. They visited 317 families and basically spent time with them trying to find out what their issues were from a psychological perspective. And of course, also working with the service providers within the area. So Lifeline Fiji doesn't only work with people who have been affected by TC Winston in terms of communities and the people. We're also working with service providers. So these are people who are going out in the field to help, but by seeing all the devastation, it's having a huge impact on their own mental health. So we're doing debriefing with a number of organizations on a confidential basis and supporting people through those processes.
I see. So, Ms. Mani, when you went to these areas, what was your observation when you looked at our men, women, and children in the worst affected areas?
Look, I think there is a general sense of despair and grief. People, there are different stages in terms of the psychological response in such situations. So first you've got the heroic state where everyone, going through that, this thing has happened, it's affecting people. And the second phase is what we call the honeymoon phase. And in this time, what happens is that you've got people from all walks of life coming into the community, providing support, providing resources, so people are feeling comforted in a way. People is also, being together in a communal setting because they're with family or they're in the evacuation center where there are people like them who are there. And then you get a stage of disillusionment. And that is the area where we are concerned about. This is where the issues will emerge when all the service providers and the donation would basically start
moving away.
Yes, exactly. So that is when people will move back to their homes and as an individual unit, and that's when all the stress will emerge. People will remember what actually happened. How are they going to cope if they left? They lost all their livelihoods. And then the final stage, of course, is recovery. So right now we're in honeymoon stage. So people are receiving aid. People are receiving the reassurance from service providers. But we need to prepare for the disillusionment state. So some of the things that we are seeing is there's a sense of helplessness. So people are saying, how often can we rebuild and rebuild and rebuild? Because cyclones, natural disasters are a part of our lives here in Fiji.
Yes.
There's no denying it. So there's some families who have been through this a number of times. One of the other things that we have noticed is extended periods of grief. So people have reported back that they are feeling unnaturally sad. So they find themselves feeling sad throughout the day or longer periods. So what we have done is we've identified families which are actually having a lot of problems, and we are doing constant follow-ups through phone if you may be able to do that, and also going back out to the community to visit them again. The other issue that's quite prominent is the grieving that the men in the community are doing, because our culture is such where we see men as the providers and the homekeepers, if you may. The men are building a sense of identity crisis. They are not able to provide for the family, not able to keep people safe. We spoke to caretakers of different evacuation centers, and there was a sense of the men are not crying in front of their women to ensure that they don't panic, and there's a sense of reassurance.
Right.
But it is in the Talanoa sessions in the evening where they're breaking down and saying, look, I just don't know how to handle this.
What am I to do?
Yes, exactly. And whether this will, and it is very important for us to invest in building positive coping strategies for these groups of people. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to note, majority of people will come out of it, they'll be resilient, and but there will be a small percentage that will need that extra nudge or the extra support to get out of it.
Yeah,
really.
I would
Yeah.
believe so. But yes,
Yeah.
Ms. Mani, we'll be back for more on this interesting topic as we have the Executive Director of Lifeline talking to us. So we'll be back soon on Speak Your Mind. Gold FM, only the classic hits.
Over here.
Welcome back, Gold FM, only the classic hits. This is your only classic hits radio station in Fiji. This is our talkback, Speak Your Mind, and we have the pleasure of the company of the Executive Director of Lifeline, Archana Mani, who has been talking to us about, the concerns that has popped up in society of our children, our men, and I didn't mention also the elderly, Miss Mani. So you might like to elaborate what they are going through.
Okay, so definitely our group identified people living with disabilities and the elderly as being one of the most vulnerable. The reasons for that vulnerability really emerges from being unable to access services that are provided. So you're talking about services being available. So for example, we found a family which had, it was an elderly couple who were unable to access the services because the food drop-off point was further from their house, and the food came in late in the dark. So, they weren't actually able to go out and get that service. So, there's a high level of stress. They've already got medical issues, and just not knowing what to do. They don't have the physical capacity to clean up their compounds or to start rebuilding in some way. So you've got a lot of stress around that. But one of the good things that we have found as an agency is we have been able to connect well with the government services. So, simple things like picking up the phone and calling the provincial administrator, who immediately mobilizes resources, and, calling social services and the rest of it, connecting with other NGOs that are on the field.
Yes.
One of the things, one of the serious cases we got on our crisis line last week was a very old couple called in saying that their daughter was threatening them about the money that they received for social welfare, wanting to take it away from them. And as soon as we heard, we intervened and we provided them with the support. So there are a lot of people out there with issues, particularly the elderly and people who have less of a sense of control on what's happening around them. They don't have awareness on their rights, for example, and things like that. So we're dealing with some very serious cases that are emerging. As an agency and as the Executive Director of Lifeline, I do want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the fact that we have found government services and other NGOs, to name a few, Medical Services Pacific, Empower Pacific, who have really shown promptness in terms of responding to some of the cases we have needed their support with.
This is really great because you work together and you've been helping so many people. Like you've said, like, for example, the elderly couple, you managed to get someone to go and visit them through this networking. And so these are the sort of things that you do. You talk to people, you encourage them to speak up. And what other things do you do? How do you help them get over their anxiety?
Okay, so if you may, Lifeline Fiji is sort of like a conduit for connecting to other services. So the benefit that Lifeline Fiji has for Fijians is that we are available 24/7, and it is a toll-free line. So wherever you are in Fiji, you can pick up the phone, call us and tell us your issue, and we will connect you to the services that you may need. And that is our job. So if it means that we provide you with basic counseling, also to point out the crisis line was primarily set up as a suicide prevention line. So it is an avenue for Fijians to call up and really talk about what's bothering them. Is there something that they can't tell anyone else? They want to be heard without being judged. That is what Lifeline is there for. We are there to be that ear, we are there to be that support, and also turning that support into practical assistance, whether someone needs legal assistance, so we will, refer them to legal aid. If someone needs to be, immediately removed from an unsafe environment, we'll involve the police. If it's to do with domestic violence, then we've got, MSP and Fiji Women's Crisis Center. So it's all about connecting the dots.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Yes, I know you must help a lot of people, but you must give us your number.
It is 132-454.
Okay, that's not very hard to remember. 132-454. 454. So there you go. I'm actually amazed what you do, because I've never really thought about the work that you've done, but since you've gone to explain to us, it's much clearer now. Yeah. And well, just another thing, you don't give out drugs, no, that has to go to the different place.
No, it is important to note that the clinical side of mental health services is actually under the perimeters of the government. What we do is our counselors, for example, are skilled in identifying people who may potentially, they don't diagnose, they can understand symptoms, and basically we refer cases on to the government services to provide the prescriptions and what if they need it.
I see.
Yeah.
And I believe, I read actually in media once that a mother said that her child, after Cyclone Winston struck, the child was, had never been the same since after the cyclone. And I believe also nightmares being experienced by our children?
Yes, definitely. Not just the children. Adults are also talking about sleeping issues. With children, of course, there's a higher level of vulnerability because they absorb everything that's around them. They're a bit of a sponge, if you may.
Yeah.
So look, I think it's important we provide outlets for the children to talk about what they feel. We need to get down to the level of, how children communicate, whether it's from drawings or, singing songs or just playing and asking questions. One of the things that we have noted is that children have sort of been left on the side, sort of, because they've shown a very good sort of response in terms of resilience.
Exactly.
They're
laughing, normally like that,
you
children, yes.
For example, the overseas media was, and our local media was constantly talking about the resilience of our people. But that's who Fijians are, as soon as you put a camera in front of them, they're smiling and, but what's going on the inside is what we need to get to. But yeah, for the children, I think the more they're able to express what they're feeling and the more reassurance they're given. But however, I want parents to understand, if your child is going through these issues over an extended period of time, there are specialists around to help. So there, the government is also working with the Fiji Mental Health Alliance to bring in, child psychiatrists who will be able to help and all the rest of it. So really, you need to know that the services are available. All you need to do is ask for help.
Yeah.
And there's no shame in asking for help when it has to do with your mental health. It is your health. It is about overall well-being.
I mean, to think of our children going through that, it's, I
Yes.
mean, that's even enough to bring a tear to my eye right now as
Yeah.
I'm talking
Yeah.
to you. But you've said that you encourage the parents to get them to get involved in like doing something to
Yeah.
get over that nightmare. How will they stop having nightmares?
Yeah. I mean, there's no, one answer to that in terms of how it will stop. So one of the first things or one of the first interventions would really be communicating with the child. So, you need to, and it shouldn't be an interrogation process. So it's sort of like a child-based debrief process. One of the things we need to understand about this debrief is it should not be forced. It should be when a person is ready to talk. So even for the child, when they're ready to talk, it shouldn't be a case where you pull a child to a side and say, look, why are you afraid of something or whatever it may be. It's really about if a child is playing and just going to sit down and say, are you doing okay? Is there something bothering you?
Right. It's
You know?
your approach, the way you
Exactly.
approach the child that
Yeah.
the child
Yeah.
may be able to share with you. But we've run out of time. Miss Mani, we'll be back for more on Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits. Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits. And we continue with our very interesting talkback. This is with the Executive Director of Lifeline, Archana Mani. And if you'd like to call, we have this live on radio and the delayed coverage shown on FBC TV every Tuesday and Wednesday mornings and Tuesday nights rather. But if you'd like to call and just discuss or maybe share with us something, you can call the number 77322907 if you have a Digicel phone, or you can call our direct line, which is 3220-907. Now, as we were saying, children are having nightmares, and interestingly enough, you've said even the adults would be having nightmares because, as you can imagine, the worst storm ever to hit Fiji, how they must have been just fleeing for their lives. So what kind of reassurance do you give to the adults experiencing this?
Again, I think it goes back to communication. How much of what you feel are you communicating? Have you got a support structure? It's about reassurance. It's about educating yourself on how to keep safe. So, these are some practical ways you can actually assist yourself. So, one of the things that we will see is when people move away from living with families, extended families, and from evacuation centers and go back to their homes after the renovations are done and the houses are rebuilt, when the next incident of, over the sort of normal windy night comes through, even if it's not a cyclone, it's going to be a very stressful time for families because all the, even with one of the things that we heard, there was extensive rain in Ba, over, I think it was last week, and we heard about from three families where in one case the child was like screaming hysterically and unable to really express what he was feeling, but it was the rain that brought it on. So that's one of the things we need to sort of remember, because right now the cyclone has gone away, we've gone back to normal, but anything close to that
Yes.
is what will trigger that. And again, just to emphasize that, a lot or the majority of the people will be able to cope. It's just a very small percentage that will not be able to and will need the support. And as a community, we need to be aware. If you know that there's a particular member of the family who's not acting normal, someone who's rather talkative suddenly becomes really quiet and withdrawn and is seen, feeling sad and the rest of it, you need to basically, ask them how they're doing. Do they need to talk? give them the lifeline number. So, as professionals, our team can talk with them and find out what's happening, because sometimes people want to talk to a stranger because there's no judgment and there's no, other issues involved with that regard.
Yeah, and over the phone as well, you don't really see the person.
That's right.
So you're just letting everything that's bottled up inside, you're releasing it to a very kind voice on the other side of the line. I'm sure it must be effective.
It is, and because our culture is such where people, there's a saying in communities where they say the issues of the home should stay within the walls of the home. So when you pick up a phone to talk to a counselor on the phone who doesn't know your name, where you're from, and you don't know who that counselor is, your issues remains within the doors,
Yes.
So in a way you're not breaking that perception, but at the same time you're seeking help. It is important you do that. And also because it's available 24/7, people go home at night, and that's, when they're sitting back, that's when they reflect on how things are going. And that's when people start feeling like depressed, or they start feeling, those overwhelming emotions. And at that time, most of the services are closed.
Yes.
So as a service, we're available 24/7.
24/7, wow, that's
to
really
be,
good.
supportive of that process.
Okay, so I mean, through your observations now with people calling in, how do you feel? What do you think about what the counsellors have shared with you, the ones that have actually gone out to the places that have been affected by Cyclone Winston? What did they come back to you? What did they say?
I think a lot of them, Lifeline Fiji is a professional organization in the sense that we're part of a global movement of Lifeline, which provides counseling. So we've got a lot of processes in place. And as part of that process, we do debriefing and all the rest of it with our team. So when our team came back, we had to really look at that aspect, because a lot of them we could see were affected personally. Just seeing the level of devastation. It's something else to stay in your own home and sort of watch on TV, but to actually go out and see it firsthand.
Exactly.
I think people were grappling with basic needs. Can I get a few extra tins to complete the rest of my house, or can I get a chainsaw to clear out my farm so I can start farming? Those sort of practical sort of needs of people, but also, one of the things that my counselor shared is when they went to the doorstep of the households, they said, we're from Lifeline, we're here to support you in whatever way we can. Would you like to talk? Obviously majority took up the opportunity. But when the question was put forward, how are you feeling about what has happened? Majority of them began by saying, we're fine, everything's set.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the counselors said along the way, 10 minutes of conversation, people were crying.
Took them 10 minutes before they actually could come out with those tears.
And a lot of the counselors reflected on the fact that people were telling the counselors that, look, a lot of people have come in, they've given us, groceries, they've given us supplies, but no one has taken the time to sit down and ask us how we are feeling.
Oh, there you go.
That was one of the strong emerging sort of feedback from the people on the ground. I think 3 of my counselors came forward and said, we told people that you can call Lifeline and we're there to help, and people were just shocked that there is such a service available, or that we can actually call someone and talk about our issues. So I think it's important that people realize that you're not alone, you don't need to be alone, and there are people who care.
And that just shows, how they came up with that, and how your counselors came up with that as well. And you said, they even probably wanted to cry themselves.
Yes.
They have to be strong too to keep in those days.
Yes.
If I'd been a counselor, I'd probably be bawling my eyes out with them as well. But
Yes.
it feels good. Like you said, the other people came, they dropped things, they just dropped the food and turn around and go. No one turned around and said, how are you feeling? Or, just give that bit of warmth, reaction.
Yeah.
Oh, well, anyway, but that's really nice to know. And just another thing, I know that there will be illnesses as well that can pop up from feeling. But anyway, we'll have to come back to that when we join you next on Gold FM, only the classic hits. We'll be back soon. Welcome back on Gold FM, only the classic hits, and we do have a caller on the line, and she would like to ask a question. Is this Nancy?
Yes.
Okay, Nancy, go ahead.
Miss Money, I commend you on your work. I didn't know there was such a organization because during the hurricane, it happened to my daughter, and she didn't know who to turn to, and she called me, and I thought of calling DSMAC, and they even sent people down to look at her house, but she was distressed, you know, because her husband was very sick, and there was no money coming in, and the husband was in hospital, and she brought him out, and he was lying down like it was a spinal injury, but they said the X-ray didn't show it. And she wanted a crutches. Well, they gave him some sort of iron to walk around in, and he can't. He's 6 feet plus, and that was too small for him. And she said, Mom, I need crutches. And I said, well, I just don't know where to get it from. So I called around, and then Mr. Jowski from the Disabled People Society, he said, Nancy, I've got a container coming in, and the crutches are there. So I've got it here now to take it. But it was during the hurricane season, and I called DSMAC, they called Lotoka, even the Lotoka Hospital came. They just rang them, they said they'll bring it down, but nothing so far. And, you know, Lillian's really distressed, and I said, Lillian, you got to take it easy. You will be distressed because you're the only one looking after your husband, and you got to hold yourself, you know.
Yeah.
So she really needs your help, Miss Money.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. First of all, to commend you that you're supporting your daughter through this process. It looks like you're already providing a good outlet for her to talk about the issues she is facing. I'd recommend that if you could call 132-454 and just talk to one of our counselors, and they should be able to help you with that regard. But I think if you are noticing that she is going through distress, then it's important that she's connected to the services, and Lifeline is there to assist. Also, know if you know, there are other avenues as well. You've got the Medical Services Pacific, you've got Empower Pacific, and the other services as well. But keep strong, and it's really good that you're reaching out to your family and supporting them through this difficult time.
Vinaka, Miss Mani, thank you so much for the kind advice. And as we were saying before we headed into a break about how illnesses can pop up because of stress. That is so, I mean, sometimes you can hardly believe that you can get illnesses from stress, but you can. There's so many. So would you like to tell us more?
Okay, so I think the first thing to note is stress is not a bad thing. Okay, so for example, going into an exam, going into for me to come and talk on this show, you know, you feel a level of stress. So stress helps you perform and to optimize your results.
Right.
But the concern actually happens when your stress turns to distress. And at what point does that happen? And that happens when the stress starts to affect your functioning in terms of your daily life. It starts to shut down how you address everything in your life and the rest of it. When distress, when an individual goes through distress, there are a lot of things that happens, and one of those things is physiological responses. So one of the things that happens is the first things that is attacked is the immune system of a person. It becomes vulnerable. So you will see that people who are stressed usually go through the normal sort of sickness. They'll get the flu more often. You know, high blood pressure is an issue. So that's why the doctors are sort of like, you need to, you know, manage your stress and all the rest of it when they're talking about issues like that. So it's not just about emerging of mental health issues. Of course, if the distress is over an extended period of time, there are chances it could turn to depression or anything else. But, you know, that of course is a clinical you know, assessment that is done by a clinical professional. But the thing to understand is that stress in terms of an impact on yourself, it can be as simple as getting the flu or getting headaches, you know, and just feeling lethargic and not being able to function and just feeling sad, or because different people deal with stress in different ways. Like, you know, even in my own social circles, a lot of my friends, when they're stressed, they don't like, you know, they stop sleeping, and they stop eating.
Yeah, different ways,
Exactly. And
yes.
I'm the total opposite. I can sleep, 1 to 2 days straight if I'm stressed.
Right.
So we need to acknowledge different people deal with stress in different ways, but as individuals, we need to reflect on what are those things that we do that we enjoy and that helps us manage our stress. At the same time, they need to be healthy things. So, for example, if you are going out and you are drinking alcohol to a unhealthy level, and you're saying you're managing your stress, that's an unhealthy way of doing that, because then it takes over other aspects of your lives.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a really good thing that you've shared with us. So, I mean, like if you feel relaxed, then you won't be stressed. I mean, stress kind of makes you feel like,
Yeah.
and you can't control your emotions,
Yeah.
and you're always nervous, and you can even tell when someone has stress. I mean, well,
That's right.
different ways they do
That's
have
right.
stress. Oh, I see. Well, that's really good. So, I mean, hopefully that our people after Cyclone Winston won't get anything, like illnesses related to stress. So that's why Lifeline is there. So, I mean,
Yes.
they don't have anything like that.
Mm.
Yeah. So, how many counselors do you have that are on the phone to talk to people who call?
We usually have 5 counselors in each shift, and we've got 4 lines. And each shift is managed by crisis intervention workers and is supervised by a senior counselor. In total, we've got 42 volunteers who work with us and who have been trained. Our people are trained by Lifeline Australia and Uniting Care Community. We, as an organization, are very stringent in terms of ensuring we're getting the right people across the phone. So they go through a lot of quality checks in terms of their qualifications and their skills. We provide capacity building. We take them through a 3-month course on crisis intervention training, mental health first aid, psychological first aid, suicide intervention, and the rest of it.
A lot of training to go
Yes,
through.
yes.
So 42 you've got
Yes,
on
yes.
board just recently?
Yes.
Or because of the need of having more?
Yes, exactly. Because what has happened following TC Winston is that, yes, we have got the phone line, but at the same time, we also need to go out on the field and help as and how we can. So that is why we have had to increase our human resources. And also, we're getting a lot of requests from Fijians who have found out about our service. They do not have any background in counseling, but they still want to help. They can come and register with us. We're based at 256 Waimanu Road, and we will then put you into a 3-month training course, after which you will receive a certification on becoming a crisis intervention worker with Lifeline Fiji.
Wonderful. We'll be back soon on Gold FM, only the classic hits. This is Speak Your Mind. Speak Your Mind on Gold FM, only the classic hits. Thank you a lot for your company. Now, we've got a caller on the line, Miss Mani, and I'm sure she has a question for you. Hello, what's your name, please?
Hi, this is Lanieta,
Bulavinaka Lanieta. You calling from?
calling from Suva.
Suva. Okay, you can direct your question to Miss Mani now.
Well, thank you for your explanation and the service that you provide. I'm just wondering, in terms of the people that were injured during this TC Winston and have acquired their disability through that, do you ever have come across those who have acquired their disability and how they are coping?
Hi there, Lanieta. We haven't received a significant number with that regard, but yes, we have come across 1 or 2 cases where people did get injured and are currently immobile. We do know that the Spinal Injuries Association with the Vodafone ATH program is out in the field looking at some of those issues, and usually how we would respond to such a case would be to connect whoever needs that mobility support and any other form of support by connecting them to the relevant authorities, which in this case I think would be Spinal Injuries Association and the Fiji Disabled People's Federation.
Thanks a lot, Miss Mani. Now, if you have a question, you're most welcome to call 3220907 like our friends, or if you have a Digicel phone, 7732907. As we are approaching the end of Speak Your Mind, you might like to just share with us, in a nutshell, what Lifeline has seen and has been doing.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, one of our core or primary objectives is suicide prevention in Fiji as well.
Sorry, I'm going to cut you there. There's someone who's just calling.
Okay,
Just
no
a
worries.
second, my dear. We'll go back to that soon. Hello, Gold FM. How may I help you? Speak your mind.
Hello.
Hello. Do you have a question for Miss Mani?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, where are you calling from, sir?
Calling from Lutuka.
Lautoka. Thank you. You can ask your question.
Well, do this lifeline assist with stress within families and conflict? Families affected after the Winston?
Yes, sir, thank you for your question. Yes, we do provide assistance directly as an agency in terms of emotional support and also assisting with any conflicts or issues within the families that you may have. If there are any other needs in addition to that, then as I mentioned, Lifeline works rigorously to ensure that we can support you to the agencies that would be able to meet your needs.
Thanks very much, Miss Mani. It's really good that we're getting all these calls. I mean, it just shows the needs of the people, what they're going through after Cyclone Winston, family problems. I believe people get angry really quickly. They're not able to hold the emotion and the pain of everything.
Yeah, so, I think at the beginning of the show I mentioned in particular the male population who are having difficulties managing this sense of helplessness and not being able to provide. So that questions in many ways a person's masculinity.
Yes.
And what happens is people start to exert it in different ways. And also to say that I think in the last 2 weeks, we've seen 2 cases of domestic violence against males, not directly related to Winston, but it's definitely an issue that's emerging where, you're talking about men who are losing a sense of control and are trying to address issues in their families, but the emotional torture in terms of, expectations from our society. And I think, particularly with men seeking help, it's important for us to work on that taboo around or that expectation around that men need to be strong and men are the only providers and that sort of an expectation, because as an agency, I can definitely tell you that on a daily basis we receive calls where a lot of men are distressed with this regard and are just facing a lot of difficulties in terms of managing those expectations.
So they're unable to, keep, they've lost that control and maybe towards their family, they probably get a bit bad-tempered or something like that. But the thing is, I heard on Speak Your Mind last week about how the women have surprisingly been holding it really well together.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, this is one of the things we're seeing. The women are just, one of the things we need to acknowledge is that the women will be the agents of change or the agents of recovery in this case, because they're just holding the fort together. And it's just amazing to see the resilience. They've gone back to their daily duties of ensuring their families are getting food, the children are well kept and the rest of it. So they're basically moving on.
Well, I'd like to say something. It's probably naturally inbuilt into a woman because obviously, we get pregnant, we give birth to the child.
And maternal instinct.
Yes, it's a maternal instinct.
Yes.
And, we have a big resilience for pain even,
That's right.
because of childbirth.
Yeah.
And it's been seen, I know that, how they've had, like, say, for an example, a man and a woman, they were, out at sea and, their boat capsized. And this is a true story. The man and the woman and the guy couldn't hold out. and he just sunk into the ocean, and the woman kept going until she was lucky enough that a boat came and rescued
Yeah.
her. So I think it's really inbuilt into the women,
Yeah.
but we must really help our men too, because it's
Yes.
really sad that they are going through this. I mean, they can get upset too, so they don't have to. So what would you like to tell the men?
Okay, I think we've already reached a generation where men are going through these expectations and are dealing with this level of stress. So first of all, I think it's important you talk to your partners, you let them know how you're feeling. It's important that you express your emotion in some way. Go out and play rugby or soccer, whatever helps you exert that energy in a positive way.
Or maybe get a boxing bag.
But really just knowing there are positive ways of dealing with things, and with the and this is speaking out of the context of TC Winston. We need to work with our young boys in our families. We need to stop telling them that it's not okay for a boy to cry. It's not okay for a boy to show weakness. These sort of things build a sense of, I need to be strong regardless of anything. I need to show that I'm a man by doing this. And that's a lot, that's one of the primary reasons behind the increase in violence against women as well.
Yeah, that's right. Because then if they don't have control, and then the violence, that's how they think that they have control.
Yeah, and also, could I take the opportunity to emphasize that if, I am making these statements in terms of saying that, yes, the men are going through issues, but by no means, as an organization, I want to use this public platform to say out, by no means, under no circumstances is violence acceptable, whether you're going through stress or distress or whatever it may be. So whilst we understand that there may be some, underlying issues, we are there to help you to address them, but violence is not the way to address anything.
That's absolutely right. I mean, as a family, everyone should just get together, bind together, talk to
That's
each other,
right,
and encourage each other and make each other strong.
That's right. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Miss Mani, for coming on Speak Your Mind today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Vinaka, we'll talk to you again next week, same time, same place. Modemanda.